Plus course, Battery Backups UPS. One risk that all organizations should prepare for is the loss of power. All infrastructure systems should be connected to an uninterruptible power supplies, UPSs. These devices can immediately supply power from a battery backup when a loss of power is detected. You should keep in mind, however, that these devices are not designed as a long-term solution. They are designed to provide power long enough for you to either shut the system down gracefully or turn on a power generator. In scenarios where long-term backup power is called for, a gas power generator should be installed. First responders. A first responder is a person to discover a data breach or other security incident. Data breach. A data breach is a risk that the organization should always be prepared to address. End user awareness and training. One of the issues related to the risk involved in security incidents and disasters over which the company has some control is the amount of preparation spent on training courses, regardless of whether the incident is as small as the mistaken deletion of a key document or as large as a fire destroying the entire building. Users should be trained in how to respond to every eventuality. Moreover, it will be even better if recovery teams were created to address the stages of disaster recovery. The following teams should be assembled and trained before disaster occurs: damage assessment team, legal team, media relations team, recovery team, relocation team, restoration team, salvage team, security team. Each team should restore its response to various scenarios. One exercise that seems to work well is called a tabletop exercise. A tabletop exercise is an informal brainstorming session that encourages participants from business leaders and other key employees. In a tabletop exercise, the participants agree to a particular disaster scenario upon which they will focus. Single point of failure. One concept that makes any IT technician nervous is the existence of a single point of failure anywhere in the network. During the process of creating the BCP, all single points of failure should be identified. The process begins as described in the following sections, with the identification of critical assets and nodes, which is followed by providing redundancy where indicated. Critical nodes. Critical nodes are individual systems or groups of systems without which the organization cannot operate. The process of identifying these systems should begin with prioritization of business processes that each supports. Once this has been done, it is simple to identify the servers and other systems that are required to allow that process to continue to function. If this investigation reveals a system that is critical and a single point of failure, action should be taken to provide some form of redundancy to the node. A critical asset. While critical nodes need to be identified and provided with additional support to prepare for disasters and smaller issues, some critical businesses processes depend on access to assets such as data that may reside in a database or in connections and vendors and partners. These assets need to be identified and an action plan developed that recognizes their importance. In almost all cases, the solution is some form of redundancy as covered in the next section. Redundancy occurs when an organization has a secondary component system or device that takes over when the primary unit fails. Redundancy can be implemented in many forms. The organization should assess any systems that have been identified as critical to determine if it is cost effective to implement redundant systems. Redundant systems include redundant servers, redundant routers, redundant internal hardware, and even redundant backbones. One form of fault tolerance that can be provided to a system is redundant array of independent disks RAID. This technology allows for automatic recovery from a hard drive failure within certain limits based on the exact form of RAID in a system. The major forms of RAID are as follows. RAID 0, also called disk striping. This method writes the data across multiple drives. When it improves performance, it does not provide false tolerance. RAID 0 is depicted in figure 1521. RAID 0, also called disk mirroring. RAID 1 uses two disks and writes a copy of the data to both disks, providing false tolerance in the case of a single drive failure. RAID 1 is depicted in figure 1522. RAID 5, requiring at least 3 drives. This method writes the data across all drives like striping, and then parity information is also written across all drives. With RAID hardware 5, the spare drives that replace the failed drives are usually hot swappable, meaning that they can be replaced on the server while it is running. RAID 5 is depicted in figure 1523. Adhere to standards and policies. Policies and standards are created to communicate to employees the behavior expected from them in various situations. Vulnerability scanning. Part of the security policy of an organization should address the type and frequency of vulnerability scans. These scans are designed to identify any security vulnerabilities that exist. A vulnerability scanner can probe for a variety of security weaknesses, including misconfiguration, out-of-date software, missing patches, open ports. One of the most widely used is Nessus, a proprietary vulnerability scanner developed by Tenable Network Security. A partial screenshot is shown in figure 1524. In the output, the issues found on the host are rated, and the issues with the highest severity are at the top by default. Penetration testing. A penetration test is designed to simulate an attack on a system, network, or application. Its value lies in its potential to discover security holes that may have gone unnoticed. It differs from vulnerability testing in that it attempts to exploit vulnerabilities rather than simply identify them. Strategies for penetration testing are based on the testing objectives as defined by the organization. Blind test. A testing team is provided with limited knowledge of the network systems and devices using publicly available information. The organization's security team knows that an attack is coming. The test requires more effort by the testing team. Double blind test. This test is like a blind test, except the organization's security team does not know that the attack is coming. This test usually requires equal effort for both the testing team and the organization's security team. Target test. Both the testing team and the organization's security team are given maximum information about the network and the type of test they will occur. This is the easiest test to complete, but it will not provide a full picture of the organization's security. Summary. In this chapter you learned a lot about physical and hardware security. We've dove into this increasingly important subject by looking at one of the most useful network protection devices around, firewalls. You found out the difference between network-based and host-based firewalls, and then learned the specific way that firewalls work to protect our data and networks by using access control lists, ACLs. You also learned about other key firewall topics like demilitarized zone (DMZ), protocol switching, packet filtering and proxy services. I talked about how firewalls can operate at the network layer or the application layer of the OSI model. For those operating at the network layer, there are stateful firewalls that keep track of the established connections passing through them, and stateless firewalls that don't. Firewalls also provide services like scanning, signature identification, content filtering, and breaking your network up into security zones. When they moved on and discussed two other vital hardware devices, intrusion detection and prevention systems and VPN concentrators, you learned that IDS and IPS devices can be network or host based just like firewalls, but unlike firewalls which block traffic based on specific rules, IDS and IPS devices allow traffic in and then initiate a reaction if any problems are detected. An IPS is an IDS that can generate an active response when an intrusion is detected. When we then covered VPN concentrators, which are specifically designed to allow several hundred, even several thousands users to remotely access your network either through a secure connection or by setting up a virtual secure network between two locations. Finally, you discovered some often overlooked aspects of physical security that can seriously affect your network. You know that beyond a doubt, if people can get to your hardware, they can do damage to your infrastructure intentionally or not. So I'm going to leave you here today for this video. If you like listening, please consider like, sharing and subscribing. Thank you.